Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today, I want to introduce you to the Mazzatron Golden Shower. And silly name jokes aside, this is really a sweet little Eurorack sequencer. It's great for sequencing drums, it's great for triggering samples, it's great for triggering envelopes, and you can also use it as a clock divider. I'm going to show you how it works, and I'm going to show you some creative ways that you can use it in your setup. Let's get into this. So how does the Golden Shower work? It's basically an 8-step sequencer. We have 2 rows of LED lights. The lights on the left represent the MIDI clock and where you are in the pattern, sort of like the playhead will be lighting up as it plays through the pattern. And the LED lights on the right are going to fill in as we decide which steps we'd like to fill in the sequence. We can have anywhere from 0 steps all the way to all 8 steps filled and any variation in between. We have 256 patterns that we can choose from. Any combination of 8 steps whatsoever as we keep scrolling through the pattern knob. And we can change this in real time as the clock is playing as well. The simplest way for me to get a clock into this is just to send a square wave. And now you can see that it's following along with our tempo. And if I go ahead and, pick a pattern, it's going to light up at this bottom LED here, showing us which step is playing at the time. So we can have all 8 steps playing, or any combination of those steps playing by just moving the pattern select knob in real time and choosing what we'd like to, trigger there. Amazing and super handy for real-time jamming, which I'll show you in just a little bit. So the simplest way to get sound out of the Golden Shower is to go ahead and decide something that you'd like it to trigger. Right now, I'm just going to take an output from the output, and we're going to run that into a hi-hat module from 2 HP. And then I'm going to let's take an output from that module into my mixer over here. And then all we have to do is assign a pattern to the Golden Shower, and we'll start hearing that hi-hat. So there we have it. We're already triggering the hi-hat, and we can go ahead and, fill in all 8 steps if we want to get that sort of a pattern. It'll even follow along, of course, if you speed up the clock or if you slow down the clock. And then, so let's say you're jamming along at any time during your jam, you can just, change that to a different pattern. I really like the real-time, aspect of this, that you can just create these patterns in real time and really change it, up and get that ebb and flow type of thing happening in your live performances. I'm kind of wishing I had another one of these already because it's just so easy to use and so easy to get different, rhythms out of by just turning the knob. You can reset the clock if you want using an external CV signal, or you can just press at any time a reset button to reset the clock. So say that you don't have a reset set up in your system, you can just do that manually to help align this to the grid. Again, another really big benefit in using this for like a live jamming type of situation. I just want to take a moment to quickly mention the build quality on the Golden Shower. I'm fairly new to the realm of real-world modular, and some of the modules that I've picked up lately, I've been a little bit underwhelmed with their build quality, so I was really happy with the Mazzatron Golden Shower. The build quality on this is absolutely stellar. I was actually a little bit surprised on how quality the components feel for the price. Definitely a good build. Here's how we can use the Golden Shower as a clock divider. I've currently got a clock signal coming in, and I've got every other LED on the right lit up. This is going to send, by default, the clock signal to your output at half tempo. If you were to highlight just the first and the fourth LEDs, you're going to be sending your clock out at divided by 4 tempo. And if we highlight just the very first dot of the pattern here, we're now sending our clock out divided by 8 tempo to the output. Be sure and subscribe if you're into this kind of content. On this channel, I talk about everything from Eurorack modules to making music with iPads. I talk about sound design and building live jams, all that good stuff. Be sure and subscribe. Now let's say you don't want your pattern to be a full 8 steps long, or maybe you want to create some really interesting polyrhythms using the Golden Shower sequencing your gear. What you can do is just use this reset in trigger, and anytime you send a voltage input here, it's going to go ahead and reset that clock. So here you can see that I'm resetting it every quarter note, and we're no longer scrolling through the entire pattern. You can go ahead and pull that out and get your full 8 steps again. Just pop that in and get your reset to trigger at any time you're sending a signal into this reset input. Right now I'm using a different clock over here from my Poly N2, but you could use a separate LFO or any other type of trigger that you're using to go ahead and reset this. I think this might be my favorite way to use the Golden Shower so far. In this setup, I'm using it to trigger the new Squarp Rample sample player. And what that is basically it's got 4 slots that you can load samples into. You can load up to 12 individual samples in each of the sample slots in the Rample, and they will play back in a random order. So what I've done is I've sampled some chord stabs out of my Quasi-MIDI Sirius, and I've loaded them up into the sampler. I'm using the Golden Shower to play back these chords, and it's playing them back randomly, so we get a little bit of variation inside of the chords happening here. And the bonus about using the Golden Shower this way is that literally 8 bars I can just kind of randomly turn the pattern selection knob and choose a different pattern, and you'll see what I mean. It just sort of goes with the groove. Check it out. So we've got a little bit of a groove here. I'm going to turn the kick drum off so that I don't have to talk over such a booming. And what we're doing with the Golden Shower is we're triggering these chord samples. Turn these halves down as well. And we're getting a little bit of variation in the sound because it's scrolling through different variations of that actual sample. You bring the release up on that and you can hear it just a little bit more what I'm talking about. Now the bonus is that literally if I bring the groove back in, I can literally just kind of randomly grab this pattern selection knob and create groovy house chords, you know, different patterns that go over the groove. Check this out. So there I've just, scrolled to a different pattern. We'll do that again. 2, 3, and we have yet another just random cool pattern here. It's sort of scrolling through those samples, which helps, to create a little bit of variety. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Let's change. And here we have, another pattern. We can even turn this off completely in real time by just scrolling all the way to the left. Now there's, the first 0 pattern is just an empty state. And 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3. Let's scroll it. And just randomly, if you were side chaining these chords a little bit to the kick drum to get a little bit of a side chain compression, be even sweeter. And 1, 2, 3. Let's scroll it. See what I mean? So literally, by triggering a random sample this way, like from the Squarp Rample, you can really get some really creative stuff happening in a live jam type of situation. Let's say 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. Let's scroll it. This is too cool. Come on. Very, very awesome for live jamming. Let me show you a really neat way to get some randomization out of the Golden Shower. I'm sending in a clock signal, and to the CV input here, we're sending a sample and hold signal that's changing every couple of bars. So every time we get a different random voltage from the sample and hold module, it's going to select a different random pattern in the Golden Shower. So you can see here as the clock goes through, sometimes we get a blank pattern and nothing plays at all. Sometimes we get a big pattern with lots of dots filling in, and sometimes we get just a real sparse pattern. This is a really neat way to get some really complete randomization happening with the Golden Shower by sending a sample and hold input that's, holding to a few bars to the CV input. Here's how we can use the Golden Shower to trigger some envelopes. If I take an output from the Mutable Instruments Plates module and run that into my mixer, We've got kind of like a chord pad sound happening, and it's just a sustained pad. But if I take the output and I run that instead into the input on a VCA, and I take the output from Golden Shower and I run that into the gate input of an ADSR, we're going to run the output of the gate ADSR into the CV input on the VCA. Now I take the output of that VCA into our mixer, and we've got a rhythmic envelope happening, being controlled and triggered by the Golden Shower. So if I change the pattern on the Golden Shower, it changes the rhythm. This is a super easy way to get neat triggered envelope sounds out of like a sustained sound. You could change the way that the ADSR is, responding here. Again, you could be filtering this or running this through, reverb or delays to get all sorts of interesting, house chord effects and whatnot. Really awesome use for this. You use it as a way to trigger envelopes on a sustained sound. Here's a way that we can use the Golden Shower creatively to create a longer sequence of patterns, such as maybe a 1-bar repeating pattern, a 2-bar repeating pattern, or even a 4-bar repeating pattern instead of just an 8-step repeating pattern. I'm going to turn the volume up just a little bit here. And what I've got here is I've got just a really simple beat, and we're using the Golden Shower to trigger the rample again in the house chords that I've got set up. So it's a few different house chord variations that it's scrolling through. But what I'm using here is I'm using a Synth-Rotec 8-step sequencer that is being controlled to change steps every 8 beats. If we look over here at the LED lighting up, every 8 beats it's changing to another step of the sequence, and this is sending out the CV information to the Golden Shower, and that's plugged into the CV input and allowing me to select a different specific pattern in the Golden Shower depending on what voltage the sequencer is sending out. So if I turn the camera a little bit here and we take a closer look at the Golden Shower, you can see that we're actually changing patterns every 8 beats. Sometimes it's a rest, and sometimes it's just a little quick hit. So all we're doing is sending out different voltages from our sequencer to change the patterns. This is a really great way to get a longer sequence using the Golden Shower. But let's say you don't want a full 4-bar pattern. Maybe you just want a simple 1-bar pattern, or maybe even something like a 3-bar pattern to get some sort of polyrhythmics happening inside of your mixes. All we need to do is worry about the reset function on our sequencer. If we reset the sequencer before all steps play through, that's going to give us a shorter pattern. For instance, each step here is holding for 8 beats, so if I were to reset the sequencer after step number 2, that's going to give us a 1-bar pattern. And if I were to reset the sequencer after step number 4, that's going to give us a 2-bar pattern, etc. It just depends on when you reset the sequence as to how many bars long your pattern is going to be. So how do I actually decide what pattern is going to play on that specific step? Well, here we have the clock not moving on the sequence 8, and I've got it just sitting on the very first step here. So I can, pick whatever voltage that's coming out of this step that I want to. If we look over here closely on the Golden Shower, you'll see that as I turn the step, it's literally selecting different patterns. Okay, and so all I need to do is, let's say that that's the pattern I want to, choose for the first 8 steps of my beat. Then we can just go to the next step, and I can, pick whichever pattern I'd like it to be. If I'd like it to rest for 8 steps, I can just turn it all the way to the left and get no pattern. Then we can skip forward to the next step, and you'll see as I, scroll the knob here, it's picking the pattern select on the Golden Shower. I can skip to the next step, and I can pick whatever I want there, or again, I could have those 8 steps rest by turning the knob all the way to the left. So if you've got a sequencer where you can literally, if your clock is playing, you might need to hold that step momentarily, or if you can get it to where the clock is not playing and you can just step through the steps individually, that's a really easy way to pick which pattern is going to play as well. So you can set up these really complex back and forth patterns and include rests and whatnot, again, just by scrolling the knob all the way to the left.